Hi everyone, Jessica here and welcome back to my channel. So today's video we're going to be taking a closer look at the Tim Holtz Distress Micro Glaze. So some of you may have seen me use this product a couple of times in previous videos, but I thought I would just sort of give you a little bit more detail about the product itself, and then we're going to create a card using this product not in the sort of traditional way that it's designed for. So this is to be used with your distress products. So in my previous videos, you would have seen me use my finger, but what I have done now is got one of these sponge daubers, and it does fit in this jar perfectly. So I think it'll just be a little bit easier, especially if you're doing bigger areas, to use a dauber rather than your finger. I'm always a little bit worried about getting it sort of contaminated a little bit. To make sure that I don't contaminate the dauber itself, you can see I'm keeping it in this clear tub just so nothing gets on the actual dauber itself. So first of all, let's take a look at the product itself and I'll show you what it's sort of designed to do. So I'm just going to lay down quite a heavy layer of Distress Oxide, and then we're going to be using the micro glaze over the top. And what it's going to do is kind of seal in that ink. I have noticed that it isn't 100% waterproof. That's just the results that I've gotten when I've used it in this way. So if I'm creating a really big background or just, using a lot of colour, it doesn't make it 100% waterproof, but it is smudge proof and it makes the colour a lot more vivid. However, if you're using either these Distress Oxide or the Distress inks to actually ink an image, then you will find that it is waterproof and works perfectly. One of the most important things is to make sure that your Distress Oxide is, or whatever you're using, is dry. So whether you did this and left it, or you can see here that I'm using my heat tool just to dry this off, and then you want to make sure that it's cooled down as well. So one of the things I really hate when creating backgrounds with my Distress Oxide is then you get that little bit of residue. So you can see just that little bit of pink on my finger where I've rubbed over the top of it, and I really don't like that. So before we put our micro glaze on, I'm just going to spritz just a small section of this with water. So this is the normal reaction that we all love and that we know, and that water really kind of takes that ink out and sort of pools together in some areas. So now I'm going to apply my micro glaze to the right hand side of this image. So you can see I'm just taking that dauber and I'm just putting that straight into the product. It's kind of like a waxy type product. You don't need too much. So once I've got it on, then I can just start putting that all over my background. So what I am hoping you'll be able to see here is that by putting this glaze on, it does bring that colour back. So you can see where the glaze actually is, and you can see the difference in colour. So from here to this section, you can see that difference. So it brings back that vivid colour. So for that reason alone, I still think this is a brilliant product, the fact that it brings that vibrancy back into your colour. So once we've got a really good layer down of this micro glaze, what we need to do next is buffer off any excess. So all you need to do is take a clean paper towel and just gently rub over the area that you've used your micro glaze. So this will take off any excess that sat on the surface. You could, I would say leave this to dry. You could use a heat tool. I think that might just heat set it a little bit, but personally I would just leave it to one side. So what I'm going to do now is show you the difference. I'm going to spritz some water on, and you can really see the difference here already. So you can see that it's just beading on the surface. Like I said, with a lot of ink like this, it does take a little bit of colour out of it, but you can see the difference between using the micro glaze and not using it. So now I'm going to show you a different way of using this micro glaze to create a really, really cool background and a cool effect. So I first seen this just at a glance on a video. I believe it was from the Hedgehog Hollow. I'm sorry, I don't know her name, but she just did this really quick when she was demoing just a couple of products, and I thought it was such a cool idea that I wanted to have a go at doing it myself. So all I'm doing here is just creating a background. So I've used, first of all, tumbled glass, and I've just put that down on my glass mat. I spritzed it with some water, and I've literally just been dunking my paper into it. That's created my nice base layer. I dried that. Now I am using peacock feathers, and I'm just doing the exact same thing, just trying to get a little bit more depth in this background because we're going to create sort of an underwater mermaid sort of themed card. So you can see I'm really just creating a really simple background. So here's the finished background. So this is sort of the first bit of the background, and I'm going to be taking this sort of fish scales, mermaid scales stencil, and I'm just going to use some purple tape just to hold down my stencil onto my cardstock, just because my cardstock is still a little bit warped. What you could do is just run this through your die cutter machine just to sort of help flatten it back out again, but I'm just taping it down sort of as it is. So I'm only going to be doing a small section of this panel. So I did design this differently in my head to what it ended up being, but I am just doing this one section. So now what I'm going to do is take my micro glaze and I'm going to put it through my stencil. So this isn't like using a paste. It's not going to create any dimension on this background. It's just going to create like a resist layer. Now, after having done this, it doesn't create that full resist. I'm not 100% sure why. I've not sort of experimented too much with this. But when you take off the stencil, you can see the sections where our glaze is. So you could almost use this product like a watermark because you can see those scales in there. You can sort of see the difference and it gives you a really beautiful, subtle look. Instead of going in with the clean paper towel, I am actually going to heat set this just because I didn't want to then smudge that micro glaze sort of over the rest of the image and me not to then be able to get that extra bit of colour on there. To add another layer on top of this, I'm going to be using the Blueprint Sketch and I'm going to do the exact same thing. You can see I've put it down on my glass mat. I'm going to spritz it with some water and then I'm just going to dab sort of parts of my background into this colour. And what that's going to do is that colour is going to sit in between those almost like fish scales, and it's going to sort of add that really nice blue, just a bit of detail on the background. And we're going to create a really kind of grungy style background. But you can see on the actual fish scales itself, so where we've put that micro glaze, the colour is kind of absorbing into it. I haven't used this product enough in this way to know why it's doing that. To be perfectly honest with you, it doesn't really bother me. And like I said, I'm going for sort of that grungy kind of look, so I'm not looking for anything too perfect. But what you can see that I'm doing is once I've sort of dabbed my cardstock in, I am taking my paper towel and I'm just taking any excess colour off, just so I don't get sort of masses of dark colour in there. And I just kind of repeat this process until I've sort of got the coverage that I'm looking for, and it creates a really fabulous background. So here is our finished background, and I think that Distress Micro Glaze has worked well enough to resist that ink and just give us a really cool sort of looking background. Before we put our card together, I want to show you another example of something I've done exactly the same as I did previously. I've just used a different stencil, but I'm also using a different cardstock. So this cardstock is 300 GSM. The previous one I think was about 160 GSM, and this one on the thicker cardstock has definitely worked better. You can see that that ink hasn't kind of gone too much into the area where we've used the micro glaze. The other thing I want to show you is I have put an extra layer of the micro glaze on top of this. I've spritzed some water on it and you can see just how that water is beading on the surface. It's really not diluting the ink at all, not doing any of its normal thing. And it is worked really perfectly actually on this example. It's taken very little of the colour out, so this one is truly a lot more waterproof than my last one. Like I said, I think that's down to the cardstock. Let's now put together our card using our background that we created to begin with. So I've got a 7x5 inch card. You can see I've cut down my panel. I'm just going to use some tape adhesive to attach this. We're going to go to the top section of the card, and you can also see that I've taken a mermaid image, just one that I've got in my stash. I've used my alcohol markers to colour this in, sort of in those turquoisey colours as well, just to help kind of, you know, blend everything together nicely. But I really want to make this card all about that background, so I've picked a really simple image. We're going to go with a really super simple sentiment as well, really simple design, just to kind of really show off that background. So we're just going to pop our mermaid just in the centre of our background. I really love how this is all sort of coming together. Like, I really love simple cards. So to finish our card off, the sentiment, we're going to use Celebrating You Today, and this has come from the Altenew sentiment strips. Just a really simple sentiment. Like I said, I want the focus to really be kind of on that background. Just to add a little something extra to the card, I've popped some gems just around our mermaid, and that kind of finishes it all off nicely. So that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you do use any of the Distress products, I would strongly recommend purchasing this micro glaze. I think it will really make a difference to your card making, just to kind of really seal in your projects. There will be a link to this micro glaze down in the description box down below, along with other links to other products that I've used in this video, along with some of my star buys that I would recommend getting. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos, and it really does help support my channel and help me grow. Thanks very much for watching, and happy crafting!